Hey everybody, just before the show starts, I want to let you know something that you'll be able to listen to after the show. We're super pumped to be able to share an exclusive trailer with you. From Blue Wire Studios comes Golden Goal: Stories of Soccer Legends. Narrated by fellow Blue Wire host Brandon Kelly, each Monday 2 new episodes will take a look into some of soccer's biggest stars and the moments that defined their careers. From Haaland, Zlatan, Messi, Rapinoe, and many more, each episode will focus in on the historical plays and personalities that make the sport great. So, stay tuned after the episode and listen to Golden Goal: Stories of Soccer Legends wherever you get your podcasts. Until then, welcome to Best of 3. Let's get going with the show. Hello and welcome to Best of 3, an esports podcast by Organized Gaming. My name is Mike, and with me I have KrispyKim, Alex, as well as Amy Michelle. Can you pronounce your last name for me?
It's Guh, but you can say G.
There you go.
It's Guh. Okay.
Okay. Well, there you go. Amy Guh. Now, Amy is a JD/MBA student at Osgoode Hall Law School and Schulich School of Business. She's an entrepreneur and previous founder of an esports startup aimed at helping gamers go pro. She's since founded another startup called Heartcade, a dating app trying to kind of break free of the traditional swiping model by helping people form romantic connections through games. Amy, welcome to the podcast.
Much.
Hello and welcome.
Alex. Thanks for having me.
Now, you know what? Today we are here to talk about a wonderful myriad of topics, ranging all the way from stuff going on in the Smash community, all the way to creating a safer environment within esports. So let's get started with Amy specifically. Amy, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So thank you for the introduction, Michael. I guess I can start by how I know Alex and how this even be. I was working for a diversity, equity, and firm last summer, Annuity. So one of the events that was kind of to go to was our mutual friend Arena's launch party. We also had an esports startup, and she wanted more kind of perspectives about esports that got like some of the racism and sexism, homophobia, transphobia that was happening in the industry. They asked me to speak on the panel. That's where I met Alex, who was also speaking in our day. And I think that's why Alex sort of tapped me to come join this conversation, because he thought that I would kind of able to provide some perspectives through that lens on what was happening right now in the industry. So I thought that was a really good idea. I did study gender studies in undergrad. Prior to law school, my specializations was in gender studies, and that was like queer theory, race theory, everything. Just a lot of things that are relevant to what we're talking about right now, especially in the Me Too culture. And, we'll get to this later, but cancel culture.
For sure. Yeah.
So I'm excited to talk about some of the things that you mentioned. That's
there it is. All right. And Alex, so tell me a little bit about what you learned from meeting Amy, some of the things that you've talked about in the past and how your history.
Well, honestly, so as she mentioned, I think she was interning for Feminuity. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Feminuity at the time when I met her. And to me, actually, I hadn't realized that it, something like feminism or sort of these social movements, that it would move into business, into almost like a consulting side of business, right? Mm-hmm. So I believe you guys were doing sort of consulting in those kind of regards for other businesses and how they can become, better aligned for the future. But yeah, it's something that like I thought was very interesting, and something that I think a lot of businesses could use, whether they think they need this or not. And I thought it was such a unique position, a unique kind of company that I hadn't sort of heard about before.
Mhm.
And when we were looking to do this kind of podcast, I thought of her immediately, right? So, yeah, it was a great time meeting you there, and then I also learned a lot. There was people from Extra Life. I think there was somebody from Extra Life. There was you on the panel and several other women, and just sort of seeing that perspective, I really wanted to bring some of that into our show today.
So, Amy, would you be able to kind of speak to how you got into gaming specifically as part of your practice, as part of your professional goals? How did that happen?
So I think I never imagined that I would have anything to do with gaming, at least on the business side. It was always just kind of for leisure. I was an only child growing up, so gaming was pretty much my own. I wasn't supervised a whole lot, so I did spend a lot of hours gaming. That's kind of how it began. And obviously, as I grew up, and then more opportunities started coming about for people who were gaming enthusiasts.
Mhm.
Right now, esports and everything, I wanted to explore that further. So that was kind of when I decided to start an esports company, and I met people like Alex and a bunch of people in the Toronto gaming scene. That was sort of where my interest led me. Now I'm not so involved in the community anymore because I've been focused on school and building my new startup, but it's always been something that's near and dear to the heart. And it was really saddening to see all the allegations that come to surface, especially in esports, because I think that there is this kind of perception that esports is, really egalitarian, it's really open, accepting. At least that's why a lot of people are attracted to gaming in the first place. A lot of people I've talked to, competitive gamers, amateur gamers, they say that they really started gaming to find a community, find friends, to find connections. It's kind of sad that it's kind of turned into really unsafe environment, really toxic for a lot of people, and it really isn't as welcoming as it's kind of like
made to be.
Yeah. So I'm glad that you guys are bringing this to light as well, because I think that we don't really have a lot of honest conversations about it in gaming. Or if people try to have conversations about it, they are criticized, they're demonized. It's just, even be able to speak about it is so tough in gaming, and that was one of the things I think are contributing to this continued culture of misogyny industry.
Right. And so with that, let's speak about arcade a little bit. So I have some questions as it relates to the current culture, but first I want to kind of get an idea from you about what arcade is and what it aims to.
Right, so it's kind of a different spin on traditional dating apps. Everyone has tried Tinder, Bumble, similar. It's very, looks based, swiping model. It kind of contributes to hookup culture, instant gratification, ghosting, all those things that we really hate about dating. And especially with digital dating, it was supposed to open a lot more possibilities. You can meet people who you might never have a chance in this lifetime to meet. That was such an amazing thing about online dating and dating. But now it's become it's devolved into, something that it's devolved into kind of like not a great environment for dating or to find like true romantic or genuine conversation.
It's really tough because it's like, hey, you had your pool of however many people around you, but the internet just opens that right up and you have, the choice between, like 3 billion people or whatever it is. It makes it, I think the quality of sort of the interactions have gone down because the volume has gone up so much, which makes it really hard.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how that happened over its life cycle. When you said that it's devolved, I had to take a step back and be like, well, did it? And then like you get the entire picture and it's like, wow, it started off as not a lot of people using it. And the people who did were kind of like dipping their toes in because they wanted to find a different way of meeting people. And things were new and exciting. And when you did match with someone, it was like new and unique experience for the two of you. And then, at the same time, you had the people who didn't really accept it and thought it was kind of, not too great. Then as more people used it and as more people started to use the internet, it's like more people used it. It was less frowned upon and people started to get kind of creative and downright sleazy with how they treated it.
Yeah.
So like now it's,
well, it became
we're past that peak. Yeah.
It's also an entertainment app. Tinder is definitely an entertainment app as well. It's not just dating. That, yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
And so then Heartcade, yes.
So it was kind of seeing how it's not really novel anymore to find people online. We've pretty much accepted it into our culture as a very normal way to start meeting someone. It hasn't been improved upon for a really long time. Just have different apps building on the same model, but just targeting different groups. One might just be for Jewish people. One might be just for like serious relationships. One might just be for hookups. Targeting niches, but it's not really innovating on the way that people are meeting. So what we're going to do at Heartcade is actually introduce arcade of dating games. They're modeled after popular TV shows and reality shows, kind of like Love is Blind and like Bachelor and like Millionaire Matchmaker, and just things that we love to see on reality TV. But we want to make it readily available for everyone to participate in. So our first game in this arcade of dating game is going to be a blind dating game. It's sort of like the game or the game show Love is Blind on Netflix. I don't know if you guys
yeah
really pleasure of mine.
Unfortunately, I do know the show.
It's kind of become a cultural phenomenon where it surprised a lot of people. It was deceptively touching in a lot of moments.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that made a lot of people realize, okay, is dating nowadays way too superficial? Are people even are they destroying their own chance at long-term happiness because we have so much choice now? Everyone is so disposable. We don't actually work at relationships the way that we used to. So it's kind of embedding elements that we really loved about certain game shows into an app so that people can meet each other in new ways. So our first game is called Mystery Date, and it's just like what it sounds like. It's kind of, it gives you profiles of people, but they're anonymous. So we try to match people based on like a matching algorithm and your preferences, but you don't see their photos. You don't see any markers of race or class or whatever, any of that superficial stuff. And you're just encouraged to have a conversation. Then at the end of a few days after chatting, you can decide whether or not you want to reveal yourself to them. If you choose to reveal your profile and they choose to reveal their profile too, it's a match. Then you guys can see what it looks like, and then you can continue the conversation there. At least that kind of gets rid of, the pressure to create a perfect profile or look a certain way. And it opens you up to the possibility of meeting and making people you might never have given a chance to. So that's kind of what we're doing right now. And then we have a bunch of other games in the pipeline that we're trying to create, but we're launching the first one in just under 2 weeks.
Wow.
Wow.
That's fantastic. Okay. So, and then once,
I love that concept though.
That's a really cool concept.
Yeah. You're meeting people on, and sort of picking people based on sort of the merits of their personality or their games or, things like that rather than superficial things. So.
That feels like as much of a game that it is, it feels like less of a game than traditional dating apps are right now, that a lot of people kind of treat them as, so this is like, you go at it through kind of a very much like you said, Love is Blind, where it starts out kind of like, oh, this is kind of silly. Let's do this unique kind of way. But then you actually get into it and it's like, oh, well, no, I'm actually forming connections with these people and I'm learning about them and I'm enjoying my time. And so I don't know. I think I'm hopeful for it. Really cool. All right. And with that, let's take a little break. When we come back, we are going to get into some of the current issues that are going on in and around some of the other communities right now. Not just the interpersonal relationships, but the everything that's kind of going on in the scene. We'll be talking about that and more when we come back from the break. Second. Hello and welcome back to Best of Three and our conversation with Amy Guh. Guys, let's get into the nitty gritty of today's topic. Our goal right now is to speak about the issues taking place and then figure out ways to not quite solve, because it's difficult to solve things with just conversation alone, with just one conversation alone, but to head in a direction. Yes, how to take action, head in a direction, solving this. So, Alex, how about you break it down for us a little bit. Let's talk about some of the things that are going on in sports these days.
I mean, yeah, it's very well documented, and on Twitter, a lot of that drama is unfolding. For people who may not be on Twitter as much or may not know, there's just so many, and we touched on it actually last week as well. But there's just so many cases of abuse of power, of sexual misconduct against minors, even of like depression. There's just so many, and of racism as well. Racism, transphobia, like it's bad out there. And again, I don't really want to get into specific cases. I don't want to name any names or anything like that. But I think the last time I saw, there was something like 200 cases that were put together in one sort of Excel sheet. And it's really bad out there. And it seems like more and more stuff is unfolding all the time. Maybe it's slowed down a little bit now, but I think it's a really good time now to take what has happened and then reflect on those and see where we can change from the future.
So
for the future.
Absolutely. And I mean, we've been seeing, as Alex said, lots of things coming out on Twitter, just through regular news outlets right now, about allegations of misconduct and just, as for lack of a better term, really bad stuff.
Just so many scumbags, like many scumbags. And again, the cases themselves have been, well talked about, and I don't really want to get into that. But what I would love to get into is sort of different types of abuse and like how they differ, because the cases are similar. They were all done by scummy people, and they all sort of abused sort of their positions of power or their celebrity to sort of get their way. And I wanted to talk about sort of how they're doing that, sort of ask how they're doing that, what is actually happening in those types of scenarios, and how do you recognize that this is happening? So maybe something for Amy.
So I think asked a really good question, which is, why is this happening? Why is this so prevalent in esports? Like, what is it about this industry that makes it conducive to this behavior? And I think that one of the main reasons is a lot of the perpetrators who were at the center of these allegations, they are really abusing their power, their celebrity, but also doing it in an industry that has very little oversight and regulation against. Why we love esports and competitive gaming is also because it's sort of informal, right? Anybody can enter, they can be plucked from obscurity and then become a huge star. They can, gain a lot, like a huge following, a lot of fans, a lot of like admiration in a very short amount of time. And anytime you have an environment where that kind of rapid success or like that kind of, like visibility is achieved almost like overnight, it does breed ego. It does breed, opportunities to abuse their power and their reach and their following. I think that's why it happens a lot. And of course, especially in communities like Smash, where there are a lot of impressionable young followers, there are a lot of impressionable young gamers. And we don't have something like in traditional sports where there's more regulations on like age. So you have to be 18 or whatever to participate in like a league. You have to and then sometimes the leagues are divided by age category. That's kind of why people like it, is that it doesn't discriminate against age. But the flip side of that is have incredibly young players where sometimes they're without supervision at all. If they're idols, older players, more established players who are there as well, and then they can easily abuse that power to get what they want. Of course, it comes from a lot of entitlement. They're used to a lot of adoration. They're used to a lot of praise from fans and from people who follow their career. So they think that that kind of extends into all other areas of their life. So they are entitled to, someone's attention, someone's body, someone's time, whatever. And that's why, it is very easy to prey on minors, unfortunately, because of course, it's also that, they're caught in that celebrity culture and celebrity worship where they're just incredibly flattered almost that, someone that they look up to in the industry is giving them any attention, giving them any time. So sometimes they don't even realize that they're being groomed or they're being preyed upon, which is also why a lot of these allegations don't come out until years later, until they're adults.
So just the term grooming, could you just explain that real quick for anybody who doesn't know?
Yeah, so grooming is sort of the catchphrase for happens prior to any kind of physical abuse. So first, predators, they will try to emotionally bond with the person that they're preying upon. This could be, pretending to be friends with them, making them feel really special, telling them, they're really mature for their age, or like, yeah, your parents don't understand you, but I understand you. It's kind of what it sounds like. They're grooming them to trust them so that they can kind of prey on them physically later on. And then it's almost like a form of brainwashing where the person who's being preyed upon doesn't know that they're suffering because they think, well, okay, I'm actually like, this is a friend. This is like a confidant. This is like a lover, not someone who's abusing their relationship with me. That's sort of what was happening in a lot of the cases. I won't name specific ones, obviously, but I think we know a lot of allegations that involve like minors and legal adults. A lot of that was happening, for sure, at the time.
Is there a way to sort of spot when someone is being groomed?
That's a really good question. I think that's part of what we need to educate more children about. I think right off the bat, it's not natural for someone who's like in their 20s to want to be friends with someone who's 14. It's just natural. You should, and parents need to be aware of that too, especially in gaming, like you don't know who your child is talking to.
Right.
It's not for a 28-year-old to want to spend so much time and constantly text and talk to someone who's 14, someone who's a minor. And they have they have to really get over that kind of initial sense of flattery, able to see past that. I'm not saying that every instance that looks like that is someone trying to groom. It's not, but you have to be cautious. Right? You have to look for these kind of.
So that's the first red flag.
Well, and I mean to add to that point, it's difficult to spot on from all parties. So from the person who's being spoken with, the minor are examples. Even from the person's perspective who is the aggressor, they may not know that their actions are predatory. Intentions may not. In certain cases they would be. In many cases.
You have to also kind of separate those situations. That grooming in itself is very intentional. Grooming is something that the predator knows that they're doing and is actively doing to a relationship that they can abuse later on. I don't want to get mixed up by, people who are just like genuinely trying to be friendly or whatever. That's a whole different kind of situation. Grooming in particular to sexual abuse is very, very calculated and planned. That is, the abuser always knows that they're doing it. It's the person being abused that might not recognize the signs, or the people around them might, especially if it's a celebrity. Coming from a celebrity is very it seems like amazing to be so special that this person who's famous and has a lot of fans would take the time to talk to you, even get to know you. That's also something that has to be really scrutinized, looked at.
I suppose to not support my previous statement, angle it more towards the correct is that the people who are acting predatory, they would know that they're doing it, but they wouldn't necessarily know what they're doing as predatory. So what I'm saying is that aware that what they're doing is wrong. Like,
do you think in all cases of grooming that the person who's grooming knows what they're doing is wrong, or is that not the case?
Difficult. I mean, there are a lot of people who commit crimes that don't subjectively think
right.
they're doing. They'll always try to rationalize it in a lot of mental gymnastics to make whatever they're doing okay. A lot of that also kind of ties into victim blaming a little bit, where it's you think, well, okay, I'm not being predatory. It's just the person being preyed upon was like careless or being stupid or
asking for it.
Yeah. So it's not really my fault. It's their fault. And I think, like, as we talk about these things more, we see that everything is connected. It's all these separate problems that link together that form this huge issue. And that's why it's so hard to eradicate. And that's what you preface this episode with. When one conversation is going to change everything, it's because there's so much to be talked about. Understand that this piece isn't enough. We have to understand the entire picture to really get why this is such a problem still.
Mm-hmm.
I want to kind of bookend in that topic with echoing what you said at the very beginning, where it very much is like a rock star culture. It's an echo of what we saw back in like the 70s. Really prominent musicians getting a lot of instant praise for their craft. Mixing in that craft with the adoration, that's where things like kind of muddy. We have people, to bring it back now to esports, to gaming. We have people who, practiced a game, became very, very proficient at a game, be it Smash, who are now seeing instant gratification for what they're doing by a mass of people. For a lot of people, that's difficult to deal with in a positive way. So they spin into things that are not necessarily good.
There's so many layers to this.
There's a ton of layers.
It's like, even if they started when they were young, and maybe it happened to them, or maybe the success and the ego got to them when they were too young, and they sort of, there's so many layers. And
or maybe they're just making bad choices. Like,
or maybe they're just making bad choices. But I feel like it's almost a cycle that really needs to be broken. It's not just like this wave. There's something that happened before that made it conducive to this. And
and so, go ahead.
It's quite a new cultural phenomenon that gamers are celebrated in this way.
Mm-hmm.
I think for anyone who grew up with gaming, it was something that was like kind of made fun of. Like, you were maybe for liking games, like maybe you did it because you have a lot of friends to play with or whatever. I know we all have our kind of different histories with games. That is the traditional narrative of like what we imagine a gamer to be. Then now, in this day and age where gamers have like huge platforms and they're actually really celebrated and they're really beloved, and it's almost like they've shot to popularity, right?
Yeah.
It's like what used to be kind of looked down upon and you get persecuted for liking is suddenly cool and amazing and popular. Obviously, that kind of culture is going to do something to someone psychologically. It's
right.
Trying to make up for lost time of like, okay, I wasn't popular back then, but now I'm adored, so I can get away with whatever. And like, I'm entitled to this, I'm entitled to that, because I didn't have that growing up. Or, like, I was always made fun of, but now I'm popular, so like, this is my time. It's a lot of that thinking too. And I don't want to generalize that that's the case for everybody, but that is sort of something that's happening.
Yeah. Because I mean,
it's a very good point.
Absolutely. On the one hand, it's great that these things are being celebrated, and these people who were once feeling ostracized are now feeling like a part of a community. But then on the other hand, you have stuff that, and so to not necessarily combat, but to be aware of all the things that can come along with one of which being grooming, which we'll spoken at length about. That's definitely one thing, is just be aware of your surroundings, be aware of the people that you're talking to, be aware that are talking to you. Be aware of the people who are talking to other people in your friend group, in community, family, what have you. Just be aware of surroundings. And I think that kind of lesson can be extracted for a lot of what we're talking about today, and a lot of what's going on in esports, is if people were just a little bit more aware of the things that they were saying and the people that they were speaking it to, we would have a lot less what we're currently seeing.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I'm sure the level of online activity in gamers is affecting sort of the number of cases that this is happening as well. The internet culture can be very toxic, not always, but that anonymity you're talking about, it sort of, and even the anonymity, but also sort of the mob mentality. You can really mob with people on the internet. All of that takes over, and you just start doing things that you wouldn't do in person. You wouldn't say in person. Honestly, I don't know where I'm going with that point, but it's tough, and I think that's what makes gaming a little bit different than something like the rest of the entertainment industry or like musicians or whatnot. Is just although, yeah, that's online too, but gaming really is just, it was born from online. It was born from the internet. And, yeah.
If we're kind of looking at why it's different from entertainment, is that obviously there's a huge competitive aspect, right? And a lot of competition, it praises like toxic masculinity traits, like extreme aggression, violence. Those are kind of things that we expect in competition. Those are the elements of people's personalities that are amplified when they're in esports or like playing these games. That's why you see a lot of behavior online that is like quite shocking. Even if you know the person, if you say that, you said, Alex, they would never behave like this in real life. There's something about being in that space of competition, and also you're anonymous, and also it's online, and then it's also the other people don't feel like they're real people on the other side.
Right.
It's like dehumanizing them in a certain way, where you forget that they're people with feelings, that they're just like you, like they're just like here because they love gaming, but at the same time it makes it so easy to hurl abuse at other people through a screen.
I love that point about competition, because even when I'm playing in a non-competitive environment, just regular ranked or whatever it is, if I can't win against the other team, then I feel like I got to win against my own team. It's like, okay, so they're beating me now. I got to be like, I'm the best on my team, and you guys are the reason we lost. Now I got to be better than you guys. It's like it's that toxic masculinity that's coming out there, and I think that was a really good point that I didn't think about. The competition really brings that out in people.
Yeah, and then what I didn't think about, the number culture. I use the word, but with the amount of chasing after numbers, chasing after clout, Twitter numbers and Twitch numbers and YouTube numbers, people start to see each of those people or their fans in this as a general number. So they're seeing that they're getting 2,000 people watching their Twitch stream, and not considering the fact that those are 2,000 people, not just the number that Twitch is awarding them for being such a great game.
Yeah, gamification works good and bad. Yeah.
Oh. Right. And with that, let's take another break. When we come back, we are going to I'd like to try and spin this to more of a positive, and where we can go, what we can do to make a positive change, what individuals can do, what groups can do, what organizations can do. I want to hear all about that when we come back from the break in just a second. There is no shortage of action going on at our exclusive partners, betonline.ag. Sports are slowly making their way back, and BetOnline is leading the way with the best odds and lines for all UFC, NASCAR, boxing, and soccer matches. And if you need even more, they have simulated NFL, NBA, and UFC simulations all day, every day, live on their website. Looking for something else other than sports? BetOnline has hundreds of casino games, poker tournaments, esports, and prop bets to check out. Visit betonline.ag and use promo code BLUEWIRE for a free welcome bonus. That's one word, BLUEWIRE. BLUEWIRE. BetOnline, your online wagering experts. Now let's get back to the show. And we are back. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our conversation with Amika. Let's speak about to make esports safer.
Action.
Once we come back from all of the work at home and the quarantining and the social distancing, once things start to open up again, and we're allowed to be in these spaces together, what are some things that we can look out for in order to create a safer environment? Open it up to think about that. Let's start with.
Well, I feel like any kind of meaningful change, it could come from two different approaches. Either you can have kind of a top-down approach where we demand more oversight, regulation, actual consequences, not just cancel culture, not just, canceling someone on social media or something like, what's a governing body in esports actually going to kind of rectify, right? Like whether that's banning, players who are accused of misconduct from joining any tournaments, maybe Twitch like deplatforming some of their more popular streamers who had up in these accusations. Like, what are those kind of things that can be done from the bigger bodies? That's one of the things that we can look at, and obviously that comes from a bottom-up approach. And the bottom-up approach is like, what can we do as individuals or in this? Right? That comes from anything, like calling your friends out when you see them doing something problematic. You might be criticizing popular gamers or streamers online, but you totally let your friends like exhibit the same behavior and you let it slide. So why do you do that? Keeping the friends and the people around you accountable is really important. Also trying to demand change from these bigger governing bodies. Start a petition, demanding Twitch take more action, start demanding your local tournaments to take more action, start demanding YouTube to take action. Whatever these platforms are, whatever place you think all the control and power is coming from, you can lobby them to change the regulations and their guidelines, because they, at the end of the day, they rely on you as a consumer to keep running. You are part of, you're the heart of the industry. Like every single individual who's a fan, who's a follower, who's a watcher, we make up this community. So if you're not going to speak up, if you're not going to demand change, then it's not going to happen, because they're not pressured from any angle to actually make a change. I think it comes from that, but also another part of the bottom-up approach is just believing victims. A lot of people, their first instinct is to criticize victims, especially if they're accusing someone that they idolize. It's very hard to separate your idol from actual person behind the screen.
Right.
You really, your first impulse is going to be to defend them, because it is sort of like a personal ego thing too, because you think, I like this person so much, I respect this person so much. If she's accusing him and saying that he's bad, then it means I'm bad too, so I have to defend him. Right? So getting over that initial kind of shock and actually, listening to victims, believing them. Of course, there are going to be, false accusations, but don't make the whole narrative or like argument about false accusations. Don't use it as a way to derail the conversation. That's a separate issue, and those people will be dealt with too. In the cases of someone bringing up like credible kind of allegations against somebody, like try to do your best to amplify that. Try to share their story, try to actually demand some change for that person. That's how anything is going to be done in this space. We all have to kind of make a commitment to make this safer for everybody. That might be giving up some of your comforts, some of your privileges in order to make things a little bit more equal for everybody. Until people are willing to, sacrifice a little bit for the benefit of other people in the community, we're not going to get that. That's definitely the first step. Knowing it's not just about you and there are other people.
So you had said there's two approaches. There's a top-down approach and sort of the bottom-up approach. I think in esports, we're really lacking like any real governing body. There's no oversight. And each country, each city, each region may have their own sort of oversight committee or whatever it may be. And there's no even real, like, we go by regions. It's like some places will go by regions, some place will go by country, some place, it's really tough. And with the lack of sort of oversight, we only kind of have the option to do the bottom up approach, I think, or really to lobby to create a top down approach. But my question really is that why cancel culture seems to be so prevalent? Is that all we have that we can do to sort of to call these people out and get them out of their positions of power?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that maybe cancel culture is the result of people feeling so frustrated that there isn't oversight, isn't a governing body to actually prevent or to deal out consequences for these kinds of conducts. And the thing with cancel culture, though, it's that it's not enough because it doesn't actually work. I think there's a lot more outrage over cancel culture than there are like meaningful changes arising from it. And I know that a common misconception about cancel culture is that it's too PC, that everyone's like on a witch hunt, everyone just wants to cancel people for like the slightest thing. And to those people, I ask, do you even understand what canceling means? Canceling, it means to legitimately end their career, to actually get them removed from the platforms that have made them famous. Like, if that is the definition, can you name me one person who's actually been canceled? They can't. Because every single person who, we think has gotten canceled or like has actually dealt with the consequences of their action, they go right back to what they were doing before. So maybe they suffered a momentary lapse, or maybe they had a period of time when they weren't really as active or whatever. They've all gotten their careers back. They're still, on the platforms they were before. They still have their fans. They're still doing their same careers. I'm like, if that's the case, like, cancel culture doesn't actually work because people forget what has happened, and people still have loyal fans that stick with them through whatever. And because of that, they will always have a career. So it doesn't actually happen the way that a lot of people think that it happens.
Right.
So
it's a lot of that instant gratification that we spoke about before. It works the same way in that when you have a large group of people, quote unquote, canceling each of these people, whenever they actually go away for a while, it feels like a community. But when those endorphins of the win go away, then that's the time that the person who was, again, canceled comes back and can begin again and start their career, which was not the overarching goal of the people trying to cancel them.
Right.
So I fully agree with that. I also enjoy
also
the
coming
point.
coming back in roles that are not as visible. Maybe they work a little bit more behind the scenes or whatever, but that doesn't mean that they're gone. They're still there.
It doesn't mean that they've learned a lesson. A lot of times, why cancel culture doesn't work is because the person being canceled, quote unquote, hasn't owned up to their mistakes, hasn't owned up to their misconduct, hasn't done anything to meaningfully whatever was wrong.
Right.
So it shouldn't be the goal that we have this kind of instant gratification of like some kind of public backlash. It feels really good for a lot of people to, criticize someone at the same time. There's usually some kind of like PR shitstorm that happens whenever. And somebody. But at the end of the day, if our goal in the end is to actually reform something, actually change this person to make them a better person, someone it doesn't do.
So removing them from their position, from their job is not necessarily the end goal, but that's kind of what the group think is. Like, this person should not be doing what they're doing anymore because of the other things that they did. So yeah, I did enjoy the point though that the forced bottom up approach is a result of a lack of a top down. So you can have and I say forced bottom up because you can have a bottom up approach work. It just needs to be from the point of everybody being aware of what's going on and what they want to see, and the management or organizers or what have you, being receptive to that and creating things that will bring these people in to what they are wanting. So yeah, I found that.
Ultimately, I think what is probably necessary is a mix of that top down and that bottom up approach.
Everyone's got to meet in the middle.
Yeah, got to meet in the middle. There has to be some oversight to dish out the consequences. But at the same time, people have to call out community members, your friends, whatever. If you keep the people around you accountable, then, and everybody does that, then everyone will be accounted for. And on top of that, I lost my train of thought too. I don't remember my point, but sorry, go ahead, Amy.
And a huge part of this bottom up approach is that, you just have to make a commitment not to support these.
Yeah.
It's one thing to publicly call them out, but you're still them, with their monetized videos by still watching them, still following. That doesn't really do anything in the end either. And I think that's also a problem that I've seen, not just in gaming, but wherever like it's rife with sexual misconduct or abuses of power, is that people like to virtue signal and pretend that they canceled somebody that they no longer support. Meanwhile, they're still enjoying their art. They're still consuming content.
Yeah.
A fan in many respects. I think it's difficult, of course, to commitment to not enjoy some, the story of who has made that content. They're probably not the greatest person, and it's difficult to do that. But also that's a huge part of going to deep platforms.
Vote with your dollar. Vote with your view.
Exactly.
So just to bring it back to the point that I was trying to make. So there, a lot of us in the industry, a lot of people that I know, a lot of the network that I've made, we're not YouTube, we're not Twitch, we're not, all of these massive platforms that have the ability to really impact sort of the way that the community behaves. So from sort of that level and that point of view, I would love to be in a place where all we need to do is educate the communities, sort of bring awareness. I don't want to be the people to try to have to dole out consequences, punishments, whatever it is. I don't think that's really the community's place, and it shouldn't be the community's place. The community shouldn't have to resort to canceling people. All they should do is really make people aware of what has happened, and then the proper authorities should be able to deal with that. So ideally, I think that's the place that I'd love to get to for us.
I think even taking a step further back from that, everything we're suggesting today is sort of retroactive. Like, what can we do after it has already been caused? I think the bigger, deeper question here that is going to take way more time to solve is, what is causing this culture in the first place? What can we do to actually prevent these? And that has to do with, like we talked about, addressing toxic masculinity, the misogyny, racism, all that abuse and stuff that's so prevalent in the gaming industry. That's kind of where we have to turn our focus to. Because, if we don't kind of address the root issues, all we're doing is just finding more creative ways to punish people. And that shouldn't have to be the burden. Because, at the end of the day, like those people have still become victims of slavery. How do we prevent people from being victims in the first place? So I think that there's a greater conversation to be had about that. And it's not just like, I know we're talking about the gaming industry specifically today, but we can easily, up this conversation and apply it to the entertainment industry, the music industry, the sports industry. Anywhere where there's a lot of stardom and power and money, ego, anywhere there's a lot of that and like obvious discrepancies in power dynamics, that's a conversation we all need to have of like, where is this coming? Where is this male entitlement coming from? And how do we fix it from that kind of? I think only then will it be, it will really change for the better and it'll have like a more lasting, just doling out.
So prevention, do you think prevention is more on the community?
It's really hard to say because at some level, it's the community who have accepted this kind of behavior. And they've created this kind of environment, this behavior to. So I'm not quite sure what the answer is, to be honest. Obviously, this is something that people have had for years to rectify. And I'm not qualified to give my questions. I do think that it's not just industry specific, but there's something about this broader culture of like patriarchy that just gender roles in general that are kind of like causing these. And this is just kind of a symptom of like a bigger problem. And that like, the first step is like education, that people don't even realize that this is happening or that they're part of the problem or don't see the signs of this kind of culture. Like even the fact that we were able to talk about grooming today, that's not something that's really brought up. That's not something that a lot of people have even in their vocabulary to describe. So I think it begins with education, having platforms to talk about this. Maybe just changing fundamentally how certain industries operate. I'm not quite sure what the exact.
Yeah, I definitely think that there are a lot of steps in each part of the process that can be improved. Yes, the community definitely can be helped and supported with awareness. I think that also goes for organizers and people within sports. So even competitors, even third parties who provide things for the and for the organ, to understand what is going on, what can happen, what it looks like, what it feels like for the other party, how it's not a productive use of someone's time. How even instant gratification can be detrimental in the long term. I think it all starts with awareness and then action comes pretty swiftly after. Putting together things like code of conduct panels, and like code of conduct panels do not work unless there are people who are them and there are people who are aware of consequences, why things are bad. So I don't know. I feel like everywhere has a long way to go, but we're starting. We're continuing with this conversation.
Yeah. And I think that's another important thing to note as well, is to make sure the conversation continues.
Yes.
We had touched on how people get that instant gratification, they forget about it, and then it's gone. We need to make sure that that doesn't happen and that we can continue to. So,
All right.
Especially with a lot of allegations in waves, where suddenly at once there's a lot of allegations that are coming to surface. Then after that period of time, you're absolutely right that people stop talking about it. I think that that was over. That all the victims who wanted to come out have surely come out by now, so there's not a problem anymore. that was sort of what I was worried about, what happened to Me Too. Whole Me Too, I thought that would just be like a moment in time and not like a lasting conversation or a lasting progress. I think that also that goes for the gaming industry, that yes, we're getting a lot of information right now at this point, a lot of stories right now. It doesn't mean that when this moment ends, that the problem has. So we need to keep talking about it, and we need to, pushing for more. I'm not sure what that looks like right now, but I think the first step is like not forgetting.
Absolutely. And with that, let's bring things to a close.
It was a heavy episode.
It was a heavy episode, but I'm glad we had the conversation that had, and it's a conversation that still needs to be. Do not stop talking about this, people. Like
let's keep it going.
Keep it going. Yeah, absolutely.
Message us, email us, DM us, whatever it is. Let's talk about it.
And on that note, Amy, where can people find you?
So I am on Twitter. It's at Amy Michelle G. On Instagram, it's at AMyGU.
Yeah.
Those are my two public platforms.
Alex, where can people find you?
So people can find me on Instagram and Twitter. Instagram, KrispyKim Donut. Twitter, KrispyKim.
And you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at StillJustMike. You can find Best of 3 on Twitter at Bo3 Podcast. Send us a tweet. Let's keep the conversation going. Send an email at Bo3 at organizedgaming.co. And everybody, we will be seeing you in the next episode of Best of 3. Guys, go and support Heartcade. It's a great...
Yeah, very cool.
It sounds so great. And I'm so excited to see how things go. So, have a great week, and we'll see you next time, everybody. Bye-bye.
This is Brandon Kelly, the host of Blue Wire's new podcast, Golden Goal.
Messi takes everybody on. Messi has got it!
From Lionel Messi to Marta to Pele, our show takes a deep dive into soccer superstars.
2-0 and is. What a World Cup for Megan Rapinoe.
From Zlatan Ibrahimovic's brash confidence with the play to back it up, to Megan Rapinoe's heroic outspokenness and World Cup flair. Each episode examines a personality of the world's game. We'll dig into Maradona's Hand of God performance and subsequent downfall, the teenage trio at Dortmund that signaled the next generation of superstars, and that infamous headbutt that slung Zinedine Zidane from glory. Golden Goal, soccer stars and the moments that made them. Premiering this summer on Blue Wire.